Hi, and welcome back to another segment of Tuba People TV. Puddles and I have flown down to Bourbonnais, Illinois, and here we are with Roger Rocco. Roger,
nice to see you again.
It's great to see you. It's been 25
20
years. Yeah, you look great.
I feel great. I feel wonderful. Having a good time.
Now, Roger used to be the principal tubist of the Seattle Symphony, the Honolulu Symphony. Taught for many, many years at Vandercook College.
Mm-hmm.
He taught at Roosevelt University. Northwestern, Western Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so big career. Big
Been
career.
very fortunate.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
And you were one of Jake's, probably maybe the longest running first call substitute and extra performer of the
Right.
Chicago Symphony.
Right.
Well,
It was a great opportunity.
yeah, when was that? When were you active as his substitute for the CSO?
From 1967 to 73.
And that's when you went off to Honolulu and then to Seattle.
Right.
And what years were you away playing out in the West?
Well, it was I was 2 years in Honolulu and 1 year in Seattle.
Okay, and then you came back. But when did you first start studying with Jake? What year?
Well, that was 1966.
66.
I was senior in high school, beginning of my senior year in high school.
Great. What was that like?
Well, it's an interesting story that I tell, that it has important significance in terms of the pedagogy and the things that he taught me, and the impact on players, brass players, and all musicians throughout the world. He gave me an extraordinary opportunity, and I didn't understand the significance of that opportunity on that particular day. But I went over to his house. I had an opportunity to go over to his house and play for him. And at the end of that lesson, it really wasn't a lesson, it was just listen to me play. He made a commitment to me, an extraordinary commitment to me. At the end of our session together, he said, well, I'm going to put you in the civic orchestra, and I'm going to give you a full scholarship to study with me. You won't have to pay for any lessons, and this is the reason why. He said, you already sound like you had been studying with me for 3 years. Well, the significant aspect of that was I actually had been studying with him for 3 years. Not formally in a room with him. We met for the first time that day. But for 3 years prior to that, I was listening to him and imitating his sound.
So you would go down to the orchestra hall and hear the concerts?
I would go down to the orchestra hall and hear the concerts, and then I would go home and imitate what I was hearing. There were no teachers, there was nobody telling me what to do, but it was the impact of not only his sound, but actually with the entire orchestra.
Yeah.
And so I didn't understand the significance of that at the time, but later on it became very, very important that what motivated my ability to play was not the traditional pedagogy that was going on out there, the air and embouchure analysis.
Mm-hmm.
It was the sound that motivated my ability. And that was really the secret. I think that was the secret of his success as a player, and of course his success as a teacher, was his commitment to the music was complete and powerful. And those of us that were influenced by that were able to duplicate that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's no longer with us now, but if we understand what it is, we can still duplicate it, even though he's no longer here.
I think that's true, and of course, as you say on your blog, RogerRocco.com, by the way, he's gone, but his influence lives on through those of us who were able to study with him.
And the thing that I tell people is that I teach his concepts, but I teach them in my own way. I think I had an opportunity, because I was so young, to spend more time with him than almost anybody else. And we developed a very, very close relationship. It was almost a father and son. Actually, I'd say it was a father and son relationship. So we were very, very close, and I spent a lot of time, not only in the studio with him, but of course on the stage. And so he was a tremendous influence in my life.
Why do you suppose in that first lesson, why do you suppose he spent all that time just playing for you? What was his motivation for that?
Well, actually, in the first lesson, he didn't play it for me at all.
Oh.
I played for him.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Right. I played for him. He just listened.
Got it.
And then he said, "You sound like you've already been studying with me for 3 years."
I see.
And I think he was surprised by that. He didn't expect that from a 17-year-old high school student.
Right.
And that came from listening to him.
All those years.
Yeah. Prior to that opportunity. So there was no influence other than that. There was nothing about air or embouchure or any other aspects of playing.
Yeah.
But the ultimate product. And when he says go for the product, that's what he means. The product is the music that you want to produce. And he was totally and completely committed to that as a player and as a teacher. And that was the secret of his great success.
So you played with him several times in the Chicago Symphony. I'm sure during those 6 years.
Right.
All
the major works for two tubas.
What was that like, sitting next to him in that situation? What did you learn in those occasions?
I learned to go with the flow. What I mean by that was that it was very easy to sit next to him because the impact of the music that was coming out of his instrument was so powerful that I just went along with what I was hearing. And it was actually very, very simple and very easy. There's a funny story that I like to tell about the Symphonie Fantastique, though.
With Schulte?
The Schulte.
Yeah.
We recorded it eventually, and there's some stories that are involved with that. But before the recording session, we took it on tour, an East Coast tour, and Jake was very, very sick. He was so sick that he couldn't even carry the tuba on the stage. I had to carry it on the stage. And of course, the first 3 movements we don't play. We just sit there and listen. He's coughing and wheezing and inhaling on his medication. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, Roger, well, you have to get ready. You might have to play the first part because it comes. The first tuba comes in initially. And I recall that when the time came for him to play, he picked up the instrument, and the sound that came out of that bell, absolutely, the words can't describe it. And I was actually chuckling to myself. Here was this old man who I was thinking that I might have to play his part. He was as if he was 20 years old and in perfect health. And the notes exploded. He transcended the instrument. His commitment to the music was so powerful that it didn't matter that he was not feeling well. It didn't matter that he was well into his 60s at the time and couldn't carry the instrument on the stage. That commitment, that powerful commitment to the music allowed him to transcend all of that. And that was the most important thing that I learned from him. But that was a lesson right there.
Sure.
There was another interesting story. We were playing Désert by Varese. And of course the treacherous note in the first tuba. And Eric Leinsdorf was the conductor, and we were in rehearsal. And I'm thinking to myself, please, Jake, don't miss that note. Because Leinsdorf might ask me to play. So we're sitting there. And I'm listening, and I could hear Jacobs humming the note. He's humming the note. He's singing the note vocally. And when it came time to play it, he didn't actually play it in the tuba. He sang it vocally into the tuba. This was in rehearsal. Well, the sound was beautiful. It was gorgeous. And no one knew. As a matter of fact, Leinsdorf stopped the rehearsal.
And complimented him?
To compliment him. And the orchestra everybody stopping their feet. Bravo, maestro. In the rehearsals. True story.
That's great.
Isn't that a great story?
That's a great story.
And then he leaned over to me and he said, my integrity won't allow me to do that at the performances. The most important thing was that we performed it 6 times, and we probably had 2 or 3 rehearsals more after that. He still sang it. He was still singing it. He was still humming it before it came time to play it. But when it came time to play, he just transferred the sound from his vocal cords to his chops, and the note was perfect every single time. It wasn't any hint of malfunction at all, every single time. So again, the singing has an important part of creating a powerful awareness of the sound. And that's, he used to say to me, if I could put my brain inside your body, what a combination. Now, I didn't understand what he was talking about at the time, because I was a young man who was physically strong, and he was always very weak physically.
Yep.
But he transcended that. In the later years, when I would meet him I was teaching at Roosevelt, and of course occasionally I'd see him on Michigan Avenue downtown, and we'd hug and we'd talk, and the first thing that would come out of his mouth was, "I'm still fooling him." Meaning that at his age, with his reduced lung capacity and all that, he shouldn't be able to do what he did. But the truth of the matter was that his mind was so powerful that it transcended all the physical handicaps that he had, limitations that he had. And that's the secret of his success. And that's what we have to focus on as players and teachers. It was the powerful mind motivates a powerful body, not the other way around.
Did you happen to notice any particular pre-concert rituals that he may have had? Any routine of any kind?
No, but there was, again, another story. Another story, because you asked me about our experiences together.
Yeah.
We were doing the Rite of Spring, and it was an afternoon concert. The orchestra used to play Friday afternoon, and he was sitting right in front of me on a chair, right in front of his trunk. And I don't know if you remember in Orchestra Hall where that trunk was.
Absolutely.
And he could play in the extreme upper register of the tuba as if it was the mid-register of a trumpet.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I think he in his imagination, he was thinking he was playing a trumpet in the mid-range. Mm-hmm. And the ease and the quality of sound made a tremendous impression on me. And we played the performance that afternoon. Well, we had a civic rehearsal that evening. And I had an interesting experience. I took a chair, I walked to put it in front of the trunk, and I could see him in my mind. I could see him, and I could hear him. And I picked up the tuba, and I could do what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost frightening to me.
Wow.
Because he had made such an impression on me that in a sense, I became him. I was able to do what he was doing. In the altissimo register with the sound of a mid-range trumpet. And again, I didn't understand the significance of why I was able to do it at that particular moment. Now I completely understand the significance of that. That he had altered my state of mind. And that he was completely focused on the music. He did not have a particular practice routine other than a few minutes on the mouthpiece, maybe he might buzz. He actually did very little practicing because he was teaching 30 hours a week, private lessons. And so he would practice, or we could call it warm-up, but I would call it practicing before the concerts, basically. And that's all he really needed to do, because he knew the music really well, and he understood the mental commitment that he had to make, and he was comfortable doing that. Only on a few occasions in all the years that I studied with him would he call me up. I was usually the last lesson on Thursday, before the Thursday night concert. Only maybe 2 or 3 times he would call me up and say, "Roger, stay home. I want to rest up a little bit." Because it was a Mahler 6th or something that night.
Right, right.
But he was able to function at all times. I told somebody recently, the only time I ever heard him miss a note was when the valve stuck. There was a malfunction with the instrument. His level of commitment, his level of understanding of the music was supreme.
Do you think that when Herseth joined the orchestra, he had a kindred spirit in that regard, that he was...
Those two, as far as I'm concerned, they are the essence of the Chicago Symphony sound. And I'm not just talking about the brass. I'm talking about how they influenced the entire orchestra with their sound. And of course they reinforced each other. They had tremendous amount of respect for each other. And that's why in my teaching, I include Bud as much as I do Jank. I learned a lot from Bud, but it was all reinforcement. They were reinforcing each other. I didn't find a situation where there were any contradiction there. The only thing that Bud talked about was the sound. That's it. And he said, if you have a powerful awareness of the sound, you get a powerful result. And then he talked about singing and buzzing, and that was basically it. So they were such great musicians, and they had such great respect in the orchestra, the entire orchestra, not just the brass section, that they had a way of influencing the entire orchestra, even if they didn't play. They were just on the stage. I noticed a difference in the sound of the orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, they were great friends and had a powerful influence on each other.
Roger, so you started in 1966.
Yes.
What would you say was the range of your formal study? I mean, every time we listen to a recording or have a thought of Jake, we're still studying with him, but.
It was really 66 until I left town.
So, okay.
Through my master's degree.
73.
And although I graduated from Northwestern in 72, I did have a few lessons that last year. Mm-hmm. But so it was from 67 to 73.
Okay.
And then I only had 1 or 2 lessons after that. Okay. But I would go to all his lectures and that sort of thing. And when I started to teach college and started to teach brass pedagogy and that sort of thing, I really look back into a lot of his lectures and that sort of thing and find out what was he really talking about, what was he really saying. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't feel that when I was studying with him that I got the whole picture. He had a way of, and as you know, he had a way of creating wonderful results in the lessons. But I didn't quite understand the entire picture. So that when I left that environment, I couldn't quite duplicate the magic that was occurring in those lessons. And I noticed that when I left the influence of the Chicago environment, the standards of the Chicago Symphony, not only Chicago Symphony, but the entire environment here, that my playing had deteriorated.
I see. So yeah.
The quality of performance had deteriorated and kind of slipped into that a little bit. And with the knowledge that I have today, I would never allow it. But at that point, I felt that I didn't have the complete picture, the complete understanding. So as I began to teach brass pedagogy and that sort of thing, I began to look into what was he really about? What was he really saying? And it came down to one statement. One statement. And I told Brian that this is the most important statement in the entire book. He's asked, what is he thinking about when he plays? And here's his response. I sing the notes in my head while I play them. It doesn't matter how my lip feels. It doesn't matter how I feel. That's it. As long as he is committed by mentally singing. And of course, he was a great solfege artist.
Yeah.
And he was a great singer. But you could have put any instrument in his hands. And as a matter of fact, there were a variety of instruments in his hands. Yeah. And he was a master of all of them. And if you could have put a violin in his hands or a harp, he would have been a great harp player. He would have been a great violinist. So it really didn't matter. He transcended the instrument with the music. The music was the most important thing. And to me, the music is the most important thing. So my job is to bring them back to the music.
Very good. I remember Jake talking about being careful to separate the hats of the performer and the investigator. And I remember him lecturing about seeing many excellent performing careers come to an early end because of the increase in teaching. I'm wondering, as you got into the larger load of teaching, what experience did you have with that?
Well, there were 2 levels there. One was on the private level, and then, of course, in the classroom. Much of my work was at Vanderbilt College. I was there for 33 years, was training teachers. And I knew from having the opportunity to be on the stage with the finest brass players in the world, I knew that there was a big gap between the knowledge in education, and the knowledge of what was going on the stage of Orchestra Hall. That there were two different worlds.
Yeah.
And I saw this as an opportunity to bridge the gap. That so much of the information in the educational field is analysis of air and embouchure. And I had saw this as an opportunity to understand that there's nobody on the stage of the Chicago Symphony who's analyzing their air and embouchure. Those are people that are committed to music.
Mm-hmm.
And that we as teachers need to communicate the music to our students and make that the most important commitment. So when I first started teaching at Vandercook, I was asked to focus on the air and embouchure analysis. And I told the president of the college that if you want me to do this, you need to get somebody else. And so it was very interesting.
I can't imagine the president or you're being instructed to speak on that subject. But.
Well, I was told this by the person who had taught the pedagogy prior for 30 years.
Okay, right.
And so I was prepared to walk out the door because it didn't work for me as a student, and it doesn't work for the people that I work with, and it doesn't work for anybody. Yeah. So the president of the college happened to be a trombone player, and he said this to me. He said, the reason I hired you is because your private students with us came to me and told me that they wanted me to hire you. So go ahead and do whatever you want to do. So that I began to focus on the music and the sound. And these actually were concepts of Vandercook himself. He said if you can sing it, you can play it. Keep it simple. I actually traced the think system of Meredith Wilson back to H.A. Vandercook.
Really?
Through his cousin, Stanley Wilson, who studied at the school, was a horn player, and studied with Vandercook from Mason City, Iowa. The connection was unbelievable. So the think system is not a fantasy, it actually was a philosophy of education. But Vandercook had passed away in 1949, and for 30 years the focus was on air and embouchure. And so I moved away from that, and I was allowed to move away from that. And so I feel that I made good progress there. You can't change the world, but I did influence quite a few people. The other aspect had to do with the studio. An interesting aspect of that is that I have a lot of people who come to me, and in many instances it's woodwind players, specifically flute players. Flute players have a tendency to give, because of the opportunities, a lot of people who play flute, a lot of lessons during the course of a week. And I've had one recently, a major professor at a major university who was totally non-functional on her instrument. And she came to me and I asked her, well, what are you doing? She said, well, I give 80 flute lessons a week, and they're low-level flute lessons. And what she didn't realize was that the quality of sound was influencing her.
Right.
And her subconscious brain was trying to duplicate what she was hearing outside of her head rather than what she should have been listening to inside her head. And in order to do that, your brain will actually sabotage you. It creates dysfunction. And all I had to do with her, though, was get her back to the music. And she says, well, I have embouchure dystonia or embouchure malfunction. And it really has nothing to do with her embouchure. It had to do with her state of mind. And so we vocalize and we finger, and we vocalize and we finger. And we bring the brain to the focus of the music again. I never allowed that to influence me, the low level of the students that I would have, mainly because I didn't play along with them very much. Most of the time that when I want to influence them with the music, I will vocalize, I'll sing. And actually Jacobs did that too.
Yeah.
He sang more than he played. Frank Crisafulli sang along with the trombone players. And but I noticed that if I were to pick up an instrument and if I play along with somebody who's really struggling, they do have a negative influence on me. So I would, in that situation, I would stay away from that. Another thing that I like to do is as soon as the student walks out of the studio, I pick up an instrument to renew my renew my concept of what I should sound like.
Right.
There's a wonderful, well-known trombone player. He said, after a day of teaching, I sound more and more like my students, and I don't have to let that happen. But some people, when you teach 80 lessons a week over a period of time, that can have a negative influence on you. And that's really what happened to me, I think, when I left the Chicago environment and went to an environment where the standards were less. There was a negative influence that I noticed that I sounded more and more like the players around me over a period of time. Well, that had a psychological and physical impact.
Right.
And I didn't have the knowledge that I have now. Nothing would bother me now, because of my level of understanding now.
Yeah.
That the most important thing for me is my concept of the music and my state of mind, and I can control that. And that's what I teach to my students.
That's great. Roger, I'm wondering if you have any information, any insights, any expertise in the area of focal dystonia. We hear a lot of that these days. It's really it's almost like an epidemic.
Well, on my blog, one of the posts is entitled "The Myth of Focal Dystonia." The medical field has absolutely no understanding of what's going on. The teachers worldwide have no idea what's going on. Everybody's focusing on the symptoms of malfunction. There's absolutely no doubt that players are paralyzed. They can't function. Their chops don't work. Maybe their tongue they can't breathe. Their fingers don't work. Nothing works. There's no doubt that there's paralysis. But that paralysis is a symptom of something else that's wrong, and that it's a state of mind. And I describe it this way. If a player, with anybody with an instrument in their hands, is experiencing failure to any degree, they have an emotional response to that. They don't like it. They're unhappy. We as brass players have what I call a double-barreled shotgun pointed to our head. Because not only would we have an emotional response to our failure, we're unhappy, it feels awful.
Right.
A friend of mine described it. He says, Roger, when I'm not in the right state of mind, playing the trumpet feels like I'm trying to push a piano up the stairs. It's very, very uncomfortable. So we have physical discomfort and emotional pain.
Yeah.
And we have an instrument in our hands. And over time, the negative experience of emotional pain and physical discomfort becomes linked to the instrument. An association, Pavlov's dog, conditioned response, and becomes reinforced by the instrument. And so when the player picks the instrument up, puts it in their hands, it actually reinforces the expectation of failure, causing the player, we always realize our expectation, causing the player to fail. They have more increased emotional pain and increased physical discomfort associated with the instrument. The instrument becomes an enemy. The instrument becomes a hot stove over a period of time. This conditioning, what I call negative conditioning, occurs. And there's a protective mechanism in the brain that wants to protect us from a hot stove. We don't want to touch a hot stove. But the instrument is a source of physical discomfort and emotional pain. So the brain begins to sabotage us, the subconscious brain, by causing paralysis. And the more negative conditioning a player associates with the instrument, the greater the paralysis becomes, until you get to the point where you can't function at all. And I was referring to a flute player before. I had a wonderful flutist here recently. She told me she could play beautifully on the head joint. But if the rest of the instrument wasn't there, she couldn't function.
There's a clue.
Of course there's a clue there. When I experienced this in my own career, I noticed that I could play beautifully on the mouthpiece alone. but when the mouthpiece was inside the lead pipe of the instrument, I was paralyzed. And so what I learned was that the paralysis was not something that was physical, that the physical symptoms were not the problem. The problem was the state of mind. And focal dystonia is not a permanent condition, and I have lots of testimonials to assert to that. Many people from Berlin to Tokyo who have come to this room and sat in that chair, who had some form of this dystonia, that I was able to show them how to transcend that. We're never ever cured of anything. Once we've had an experience, any experience in life, it's permanently it stays in the brain.
Yeah.
So we have to replace it. I said we can't erase our past. We have to replace our past. And I describe it as being chased by a tiger. Being chased by a tiger is only fatal if you can't outrun it. So we spend our entire lives. I've spent my entire life outrunning the tiger, but I know what to do. I know what to do to make that happen, and it doesn't take very long. Last summer I had a wonderful tubist from Italy, magnificent artist, and he contacted me and he said, "Well, I have embouchure dystonia." I said, "Can you buzz the mouthpiece?" He said, "Sure, no problem." Of course you could buzz the mouthpiece. As a matter of fact, in doing this for 45 years, I've never had anybody who exhibited any form of dystonia who couldn't at least buzz the mouthpiece or play the head joint on a flute or play the mouthpiece in the clarinet.
So just getting back to your definition of dystonia, I mean, the medical profession would say that dystonia is irreversible. I mean, that's implicit in the definition.
Absolutely
right?
Incorrect. Absolutely incorrect, because it's based upon the state of mind, and we can control our state of mind, and we can influence our state of mind. The tissue is only responding to the state of mind. It is not irreversible. Absolutely not. There are hundreds of people out there who will absolutely come forward and said that we're able to save their careers by bringing them back to the music, transcending all the instrument, and that's what this is about. The valveless tuba, transcending the tuba.
You want to show this? Why don't
Sure,
you,
absolutely.
show this valveless tuba. Watch your pedals. It's okay.
About 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I was cleaning the instrument. I took it apart, took all the slides off, and took the valves out. And then I said to myself, I wonder if I could play it. And absolutely.
There you go. All
Transcending
right.
the tuba.
Transcending the tuba. Very good. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, this is something that I'll use in my own lessons. I'll tell my students to break their tuba by, essentially half valving.
You can half
so
valve
it
it?
works. It's not quite as open as that, obviously.
I actually have two very good octaves on this particular instrument. On the 5-valve C, all you have to do is pull the 5th valve slide.
Oh, okay.
You pull the 5th valve slide, there you go. You have a double tuba there. You have a valve tuba and a valveless tuba.
That's great.
It's a wonderful tool.
Well, Roger, we're going to, I think we're going to go into a second segment. So
Okay.
If you don't mind sticking here for a little bit.
Sure.
Pedals don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. I know. I'm going to give him his, I'll give him his duck food next time. All right, we'll see you in a few minutes.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
I see a red thing. Is it really going?
It's going.
You
You want me
sure?
to do it again?
No. If it says it's moving.
Well, I'm gonna. It's.
Is there possible to get the water drip? Or is
To stop that?
Yeah. Is that?
No, that's dripping from outside
Okay.
into the house.
That's fine.
There's no way. There was no way to stop that.
We got that complaint on tape, by the way.
Thanks. Put that on the blooper reel. Once you start it, restart it. What is that now?
7?
Yeah, so we
I wasn't
can
really paying attention. I was actually listening,
listening to
more.
the. Yeah, you can shut it now.
Oh, okay, alright.